Hello, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this trap here. This is an indigenous Taiwanese deadfall trap. In the Sedek language they call it the dangan. So I made a video just a while back on this. I was still just like wrapping up my summer school with it, so it really wasn't the best. But I'm going to make this video to hopefully make up for it, so then hopefully in this video it's a lot more clear what I'm doing with it. So anyways, this, like I said, this deadfall trap is called the dangan. It's used by the indigenous Taiwanese, specifically, mostly the central mountain range indigenous Taiwanese tribes, such as the Sedek, the Truku, the Atayal, and the Bunun. And they use it over there to hunt things like Polynesian rats, squirrels, and other small game. So, let's begin. Okay, so we've got everything we need right here, so let's get started. So the first thing we need is a stick that holds up the rock. So this stick should do. You could get, generally what you are looking for is a stick that's fairly straight. It doesn't have to be completely straight, it can have a bend in it, or whatever. But it can't be like super curved. So a stick like this should do just fine. So usually for the bigger rocks, like what I'm using for mine, I'm going to be looking for about fingertips to my elbow length. So let's cut that down to length. I'm gonna be looking to cut right about here. There we go. Just gonna clean up this end. Okay, so something that helps a lot with this trap sometimes is if you just sort of make one end into sort of like a chisel shape. And it's usually the end. Usually you want it to be the end, you want to cut down on the end that's concave rather than convex. So this right here is concave, this right here is convex, so I want to be cutting down on this side. So let me just get that straight. Now you notice I actually cut the stick a bit longer than it had to be, specifically so that if I want to make any modifications like this, I could. Okay, so that's really all we need to do for that. Okay, so next we're going to be making the toggle and the stopper. So for the toggle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this piece right here. I might be able to make the stopper out of the same piece, but I don't know. So just get to that. It's fine if it splits because it's going to be splitting anyways. So this piece that fell off should be fine for making the toggle. And what we want to do first, I want to carve a section of it down flat to get rid of that, the inside of the bamboo, which is curved naturally. Okay. May want to cut it down over on this end because it's all frayed. That went flat. There we go. There, that's better. Okay, so flatten it out. You don't have to do the entire thing because we're going to cut off a piece of it anyways. So I think I'm going to cut it off about here. You don't need it to be too long. Depending on how high you want your rock to be, It could be useful to have it shorter or longer, but generally if you have it longer, you can always adjust it easily without carving it down still, so you don't have to be too exact with this. Just gotta get it flat. Let me just get that. Okay, so now this size is fine. What we want to do is get it thinner though. We want to keep the thickness, so gonna carve down on the two sides, split it there, split it there. So now the thickness in this dimension doesn't matter too much either. Just really long as it's not too thick as to get in the way of any of the other components when it's triggered. I usually like to have it around just a little less than a centimeter or so. So that should be good right there. I'm just going to carve down at the very tips. Do that so then as to make sure it doesn't split or anything from the cuts I made previously. And there we go. That's our toggle. Okay, so let's see. May want something longer for the support stick. So I think I'm just going to cut off maybe just one section of the bamboo right here, just one node. There we go. Okay, and we're going to make our support out of this. So it's already split right here, so just take that. Even this should be good right here. Just gonna carve it down. Gonna cut it off at this end to prevent it from splitting further. Gonna cut down on the sharp edges of the bamboo. Whenever you're working with bamboo, you always want to be really careful because whenever it splits, like I'm doing here, it'll always be really sharp. You can actually make knives out of this, and they don't, they're not too bad really. So, next thing we want to do, I usually just like to get rid of all this fluff inside of the bamboo. Now, not all bamboo has this, especially green bamboo. With green bamboo, there's just a membrane inside of it. But just the fluff sometimes makes everything just a bit slower to release and stuff because it provides friction on everything. Okay, that should be good. Next thing. We don't need it this long, of course. I think even just hand length should be fine in most cases. You generally would want it a bit longer, but because this is the one that it doesn't matter how long it is. Because if it's too short, then it won't be able to stick into the ground and not be in the way of the toggle. I'm just gonna cut it off right around here. So now one end of this has to be a spike. Of course, for most of these you could be just using regular sticks and stuff. You don't have to be using bamboo or anything. I'm just using bamboo because it's convenient. It's a traditional material, but sticks are too, so it doesn't really matter too much. So make sure this ends a spike right here, and that's where it's going to stick into the ground. So that's it for those parts. We got our toggle and our stopper. On to the next component. Okay, so next thing we have here is a trigger stick. So for a trigger stick, you want it long enough to reach under the rock, usually by from just past the Y stick. You'll see what I mean later. So this is probably a bit too long, because if it reaches past the Y stick, then it can be triggered from outside of the trap even. And you don't want that. So I think can probably just cut it down to about here. Now I'm using bamboo mainly because when it splits fairly straight. And what I want to do for baiting it is I'm going to split it on the end, and then you could put something into the end there. So let's cut it down. What I do for this, I cut all the way around the bamboo, so then it doesn't split. Bamboo splits very easily most of the time. Like, if you take a look, even right here where I've began to cut it, it started to split just from being cut. So just gotta cut a bit deeper, and then we could snap it without a risk of splitting it. Or that works too. This is pretty thin-walled, but it doesn't matter. Okay. So this is our trigger stick here. See, I've just cut just a little past the node here. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to split it just about dead center. Just like that. So then you have a nice split going down it. And what that allows you to do is bait it. There are other ways of baiting it. You could obviously take just a regular stick and sharpen it into a point and stick something onto the end, or just like smear peanut butter or something onto it. If you want to be traditional, you could be doing what I'm doing right here. I'm using just sort of the very end of some millet and sticking it into that groove. Just a sec, put my knife away. Or what some other people do in Taiwan, they make some taro paste and smear it onto the end of the trigger stick. So let's get that millet shoved in there. This is some old millet. So we got some millet shoved in there, and that should be plenty bait. You want to keep it as close to the end of the stick as possible, because you want them as far into the rock as possible for it. Okay, so on to the next component. Okay, so I'm cheating a bit with what I'm doing with the Y stick. I'm using the same Y stick I used before. If you saw my previous video on making the dangan, that wasn't very good. I still use the same Y stick. So really all you need to do is shave one end of the stick into a point, and that that's where it's going to be stuck into the ground, and that's pretty much all you need. So next thing we're making is the string. Okay, so for making the string here, I'm just taking this hemp string right here and going to turn it into some 2-ply cordage by pulling a twist into it. So you're going to need more than double you're going to have to take more than double the string you need in the end, because you're going to half it, and also you want to take a bit more just in case you need to make some adjustments, and also you need some string for tying it off. So let's take a look at that. That should be plenty. We're just going to cut it here. Alright. Next thing we do, take the two ends. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. So you take the two ends here, and we run down the string until we find the ends, or the center of where both of them, when both of them are at the same length. Okay. So, got this right here. What we're going to want to do, first, usually I like to put a bit of a loop in it just to start off. I can hold it all there, and so all you do, you twist both of the sides simultaneously, and that'll make it want to spin around itself, just like this. Okay, and then make sure there aren't any tangles in it. Just keep doing that until you've gone all the way down your string. So be back when I'm finished with that. Alright, so the string is now finished, so let's get ready to set our trap. Alright, so here are all of the components we need to set our trap, so let's begin. So first thing we have to do, we have to pound this Y-stick into the ground. So let's move this out of the way. I'm gonna grab my knife. You want to have it at somewhat of an angle. You don't have to, you can have it straight up, but generally it's better if you have it at an angle. Somewhere between 45 to 90 degrees is usually best. Let's pound it in. Alright, and let's check, see how that goes with the rock. So the rock's going to be about here. You notice I actually took off the bark and made this a bit shorter upon inspecting how everything was going to fit together. Now that's why it's generally better to leave it longer before you start. So you can always shorten it, but you can't obviously make it longer. And you remove the bark mainly just because, just to be nice and tidy. So that should be good. On to tying up the string. Alright, so to tie up our string, what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that it's almost as if it's a loop that's going around the stick like this. So what we're going to do, so the loop's going to have to start from the top. So I'm going to take the end of the string that's knotted and just put that into a clove hitch. So make one loop, then a second, put them together, and then just slide it on top of the stick. I'm going to finish it off just right above, or just right to the side of the top of the stick. Pull it nice and tight. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap it a couple times. Make sure it's really nice and tight. And now that it's wrapped, just going to do a simple overhand knot right here. Make sure it's nice and tight. Alright, next thing we have to do, we have to see how long we need this string to be. So usually so it's going to be looping back around like this. Usually I go for just a little bit less than the end of the string, so or the end of the stick. So I'm going to say loop it around back about here. So right there, I think just to keep track of it, I'm going to tie a knot. Not too tight. So right there. Alright, so then all you have to do now is take both ends of this. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do a reef knot. So it's just like the overhand knot, only difference is you have one side go over, and then the second time you have that same side go over as well. Gotta get that knot through. There's your reef knot. Make sure it's nice and tight. Going to tie that, just do an overhand knot just to secure it. And then, now that that's done, you can just cut off these two loose ends. There you go. Now you see that's been turned into sort of a loop here. And then that's really all you need. Alright, so now we have all of our components finished. Let's get to setting the trap. So first thing you want to do is you want to loop the string around your stick as if it's just like a loop that's going around it. And lift up our rock here. Put our support stick underneath it. Like that. Take your string. You see what the string is going to do. It's going to loop around the Y stick like this. So let's grab our toggle right here and put it through the loop of the string just like that. And it rests behind on the other side of the Y stick to keep everything up. Next, we take our trigger stick, put it behind the toggle so that the toggle doesn't kick out. At this stage, you want to make sure the trigger stick's fairly high up the toggle so that it doesn't kick out on you. Slide it all the way into under the rock, and then once it's in a good position, you take your stopper, and then you just poke it into the ground right next to your trigger stick so that it doesn't move. Now all of this is stable. You want to make sure that your toggle is not in front of your stopper. Say, if your stopper is all the way back here, then that will obviously stop the toggle from kicking out once the trigger is activated. But you can do that if you want to just set up a fake trap just for testing or anything. But so next thing, all we have to do is adjust the sensitivity. Alright, now to adjust the sensitivity. So if you want to adjust the sensitivity, there are two parts you can move. You can either move the trigger stick, or you can move the toggle, or you can move both. So if you want to make it more sensitive, what you need to do is, if you want to move the toggle, you rotate it up like this, so it's closer to the edge of the trigger stick. If you want to make it more sensitive by moving the trigger stick, you just need to move the trigger stick down, so it's closer to the end of the toggle. Now, to make it more or less sensitive, what you need to do is just move this toggle down so it's farther away from the edge of the trigger stick, or you can move the trigger stick up so it's farther away from the edge of the toggle. And that's all there is to it, to adjusting the sensitivity. Okay, so another tip for whenever you're setting up the dangan, you always want to keep 1 or 2 fingers behind the toggle in the direction that it kicks out, so that if you make any mistakes when you're setting it up, say like you're adjusting the sensitivity here, you put it too far down, then it doesn't kick out on you and crush your fingers. Alright, let's take a look at our setup process a bit closer this time. So first things first, we lift up our rock, and we take our support stick and put it underneath the rock. And we take our string from our support stick and also our toggle, and put the toggle through the loop of the string. Then the toggle rests right there on the other side of the Y stick. And we can let go of the support stick. Next thing we do, take our trigger stick and push it behind the toggle. You slide it in all the way to the back of the rock. And then once it's in a good position, and you take your stopper and put it into the ground right next to where you want it to stop. And then, so now all of this is stable. Next, you just need to adjust the sensitivity. And then that's it. So then, say you got something coming up wanting to take the bait over there, touches it, and then it gets crushed. Alright, so that just about does it for this video. Now that I'm finished with all of my summer school, I'm probably going to be making a few more videos until the summer ends. And depending how everything goes, I might even make a video about catching the rats I have here in the garden with the dangan. They've been eating all of our vegetables and all of our fruit, and we've gotten very little from our fruit trees the past few years, so hopefully we can settle down this problem. So until then, bye!